So now we're going to go to Stacey Glass, and I just want to say that it's a real joy to work with her. She is a VP of Built Environments for Cradle to Cradle Product Innovation Institute. We've had a lot of conversations and a lot of exchanges in the last several months, and we really enjoy her as a equal in terms of just sharing our commitments, but also sharing information. So it's been a really enjoyable experience to meet you and to know you.
Thank you, Diane. Now I think I'm mic'd up with this one, so I think I'll leave this. Okay. Thank you so much for having me. And I just need to know which button to push on here to move things forward. Or do I need to point it at? There we go. Very nice. Thank you so much for having me. Can you hear me okay? Okay, fantastic. Diane asked me to come today and talk about material health because it is mysterious. In my personal life, have pursued solutions for my home and my personal care to eliminate, chemicals of concern. But, then the very next day I turn around and that thing I just bought's got trouble in it. And so this is a moving target. What I want to try to do today is demystify how to think about material health in the built environment, and how the Cradle to Cradle certified program can hopefully be an easy button for you, so that when you say Cradle to Cradle Silver or Cradle to Cradle Gold, it's meaningful to you and you know, what that does. And then we're also going to, and Felix introduced this, and when I was talking to Susan earlier, I'm really looking forward to our conversation after my talk, because it's like, what's next? There's these topics that are sort of rumbling up, and it's not just about safe ingredients, material health. I am so glad that Lead wrote this in and that we are having this conversation now. But what's next is safe ingredients perpetually cycled. And we'll get into that a little bit with what's going on in the world, that why we need to think about cycling these chemicals. So let me jump right in to this. Our mission is to turn the making of things into a positive force for people and planet. And I'll show you how we do that. Today, I'm going to talk about just a brief overview of the Cradle to Cradle program. We're going to go deep into the material health methodology on that. And then at the end, I'm going to show you how to achieve the LEED credit. So you'll walk away with something really practical today from that. And then I'll tee us up for our conversation with Susan afterwards.
That's the only visual.
I see, yeah. So these things happen. This just helps me introduce why I'm here today. I am not an environmentalist, or at least I didn't consider myself one 10 years ago. And I'm a business person, and I did business startups. And I was brought to a talk with William McDonough, author of Cradle to Cradle, Remaking the Way We Make Things, because there were some private equity folks who wanted to make an investment in doing green building materials. And I'm like, all right, you tree huggers, I'll come see Bill McDonough talk. And what Bill said is, we're talking about toxins, we're talking about waste, we're talking about population growth, we're talking about child labor, but we don't have a toxins problem and we don't have a population problem, we have a design problem. And that suddenly resonated with me. I was like, oh, and the reason I didn't want to get involved in this environmental stuff is because it's like, who can solve this? There's all these problems, but when we look at it as a design problem, it feels like we can do something about it. And manufacturers are at ground zero when we're talking about redesigning to solve these problems. So Cradle to Cradle, Remaking the Way We Make Things. And if people here read that, I know it's a little old now, it's not very many people have read it. So it presented a simple design solution to these problems that are kind of ailing our planet. And it said, designed to eliminate the concept of waste. If we simply think of every ingredient that we're using here as something that could be a useful resource later on, we're going to make all these other decisions that are beneficial. We're going to choose positive chemistry, right? We're going to choose materials that retain their value so that we don't want to put them in the landfill, that somebody wants to grab that before it gets into the landfill and do something with it. So designing to eliminate the concept of waste is very simple, but there's a lot that's wrapped up in that, and I'm going to dig into it a little bit more. use renewable energy, right? We have all of the energy that we need in sun and wind and clean and renewable ways. But yet we continue with this extraction of the fossil fuels, with these diminishing resources and things like that. So encouraging us to design in ways that we can use renewable energy to power that, to transport those things, all of those things. And if you combine these two things together, if you've got something that's perpetually cycled and it's all being powered and transported with renewable energy, we completely change the conversation about life cycle assessment, right? Life cycle, that, you know, we're talking about extraction, we're talking about transport, but if we design differently, that can really be solved as well. So very simple, elegant design principles. And celebrate abundance. When I first started getting involved in this movement, I thought, I just need to stop consuming things. Like, me just buying things is a bad thing. It feels that way sometimes. But in a cradle-to-cradle world, when we design this way, we can have 9 billion people on this planet, and everybody can have what they need because things are being cycled, not going straight into the land, you know, extraction into the landfill. And so this is a design philosophy that means we can grow as a planet, we don't have a population problem, we can celebrate abundance, okay? And that's what got me hooked into this. So what I want to do just quickly is talk about how we went from a book to a certification program and to LEED version 4. So a brief history. The book was published in 2002, and it got a lot of people excited. And the authors of this book, Michael Braungart and Bill McDonough, started working with manufacturers to apply these principles. It actually happened before 2002. Some of the case studies are included in the book. And out of that came some really beautiful work on some early products. And they decided to put a label on that, Cradle to Cradle Certified. And that was in 2005 that label was first used. And that was really intended at that time to be a symbol of design achievement. It wasn't meant to be an eco-label like we think of it today. But in 2005, eco-labels were really starting to proliferate. And people said, oh, this is so curious. It would be great if we had a multi-attribute certification, like instead of just saying one thing like green seal or recycled content, that this actually says something about a holistic design of this product. But it was housed in a private consulting firm. Nobody really knew what it meant to be cradle-to-cradle certified, and so it was rightly criticized. And I was a critic of the cradle-to-cradle certified label when I first got involved. And so the founders of this understood that, and they really wanted this idea. They saw that the world wanted this idea, and they knew they had to make it public. So in 2010, they created the Cradle to Cradle Products Innovation Institute, which is where I reside. It's a nonprofit organization, and they gifted the certification protocol to the Institute so that it could become public, transparent, ISO compliant, all those things that we look for in a good label. And over the course, so since 2010, it took us 2 years to actually get the standard published. It's so complicated. You can read it on our website. It's 328 pages plus another 123 pages of supplementary guidance documents. But it's there and you can read it, but I'm going to try to hopefully simplify it for you tonight so that you don't have to go through that. It took us 2 years to get that published. And it's taken us another 2 years to put the infrastructure in place to become ISO compliant, which we are now and have applied for our accreditation. So big changes in how this program has evolved. And right about the same time that we published our first transparent public standard, LEED wrote in this material health credit that recognized Cradle to Cradle as a leadership standard for material health. So, and that really started to change things, and that's really why I'm here talking to you tonight. So I'm going to skip some of these. To date, over 200 companies have engaged in the Cradle to Cradle certified program and have certified almost now, today, 3,000 products. And we have product categories covered from, we're doing a house on the Greenbuild Expo floor if any of you are coming down to Washington, D.C. next week. I'm not kidding, from the toilet paper to the roofing, Cradle to Cradle certified. Mattresses, cabinets, flooring, of course, residential furniture. It's really incredible. Now, it used to just be this exclusive thing, and now I think you can really make cradle-to-cradle decisions in your everyday life. At least that's my mission. That's what I'm trying to do in the built environment. And it's this path to positive, and what I want to make meaningful for you today is that there are levels of certification. We understand that not all manufacturers start at the same place. Not every product is perfect. And we want manufacturers to be able to enter the program at the basic, bronze, silver level with the goal of achieving gold and platinum. And so every company that comes into the program is recertified every 2 years, and they make commitments every 2 years of what they're going to work on during that time to try to achieve higher levels of certification. So one thing that you can know about a company that has cradle-to-cradle certified products is this was not a one-time thing that they paid a fee for and got a label put on their product. This is a company commitment that they're making. And so I think you can feel good about companies who are engaging in cradle-to-cradle because it's more than just a one-time project. So the Cradle-to-Cradle Certified program is a multi-attribute, third-party certification program that's based on 5 principles. The first is material health, and that's about selecting safe and healthy materials. The second is about designing for eliminating the concept of waste, and that's about this material reutilization. So we provide a material reutilization score for every product. How ready is this to be cycled safely and infinitely? And so in those first 2, material health and material reutilization, are really about how it's designed. There's a lot of thought that goes into designing products with those 2 things in mind. The other 3 are about how it's manufactured with respect for humans and the environment. And so we have water stewardship, which really gets at the quality of water. It comes back to the chemicals that are used too. Using renewable energy, the platinum goal there is to be 100% plus renewably powered in manufacturing. And social fairness, which has a very broad and kind of creative approaches in the program here. So that's the full program. And so when you see a cradle-to-cradle certified label, it embodies all 5 of these attributes. And a manufacturer goes through 3 critical stages here. They first have to deeply understand their product from a chemistry perspective, from a material reutilization potential, from their water quality, from their renewable energy perspective. And we call that the inventory stage. This is the deep knowing stage. And then they assess that against their cradle-to-cradle goals. And we simplify, but companies have broader sustainability goals than just this. But when we're talking about product manufacture, they're setting their sights at platinum. They're setting their sights at being 100% positive chemistry, 100% reusable, and capturing those nutrients at the end of their life cycle. Clean, the water coming out of the manufacturing facility is as clean as drinking water, 100% plus renewable energy, and deeply engaged with the communities in which they work in. That is the platinum goal. And so manufacturers assess where they're at against that goal, and they start to first, on the bottom here, you'll see minimizing the negative things. That's a good first step. They might conserve energy. They might conserve water. That's kind of being less bad. But what we're really going for are these things that have a more positive, a more beneficial impact. And one of our founders, Michael Brongart, often says that humans, people, strive for positive in both their social and economic pursuits in the world. But when it comes to the environment, we keep shooting for 0. Zero waste, net zero. And he's like, that's not a very inspiring goal. Let's shoot for positive. Let's go beyond that. And that's what we're trying to get across here as we move to gold and platinum in our certification program. So there's a couple things you can know about a product once it's been certified. The overall certification mark here, silver, represents all 5 of those attributes. And you'll see a sample scorecard here. Here, this product is gold in material health and material reutilization and social fairness, but they're silver in renewable energy and water stewardship. So their overall certification that they can put on their product is that lowest level of achievement in any one of those 5 attributes. And we realize that so many products have a very varied, especially in our version 3, because things got even more challenging, has such a varied scorecard that we started publishing these scorecards on our website. So now when you go to our free product registry on the website and you click through on a product, you'll be able to see, oh, they're gold in material health, but they're bronze in renewable energy. I understand what that means. And you might be selecting a product for material health today, and so being gold would be meaningful to you after I finally get to that in my presentation here. So I also want to say, just this year, because material health has been such a big part of the conversation in the built environment, we, for the first time, broke out one of these 5 attributes. And it was really controversial in our program because Cradle to Cradle is a design solution. It takes all 5 of these things. But we have the most robust material health methodology on the market, and we wanted to make it available and get more companies on the path, if you will. And so we have, for the first time, allowed manufacturers to just pursue material health, and what they receive is a material health certificate that looks like this. And so that just means that they've gone through the rigorous Cradle to Cradle material health methodology. And so you'll see a separate registry on our website for material health certificates. So you can look in both places for those products. So now what I'd like to do is dig deep into material health. Like, what the heck, right? It's confusing. How do we really know if something is good from a material health perspective? And what I'd like to do is present these 4 steps. And these are steps that I agree on, that we agree on kind of across the industry. When I work with my partners at Healthy Building Network, Bill Walsh, who's here today. Sorry you have to sit through this one again, no. Our partners at Healthy Building Network, Green Screen, the Health Product Declaration Collaborative, we are all involved in a harmonization effort. But we all agree on this, that manufacturers take 4 steps to get towards material health. And the first is inventory, and that, I loved what you said, it's like the food, and picking the right ingredients. And this is about going really deep in the chemistry and truly understanding. And you might think that a manufacturer, should know what's in their product, but they have deep supply chains. So they're getting this edge banding, from a supplier, and that supplier is getting it from somebody else, and the chemicals that go into that come from 8 other suppliers. And so really getting at, like, hey, do you have PVC in your product? A manufacturer might legitimately not know if they do or not. And so this whole transparency initiative, I think, has really helped open up these conversations with the supply chain to help us truly understand this. So first is really understanding what's in your product. The second is screening, and this can be a really helpful step. There are known bad hazards. Like, we know now that we don't want BPA in our, baby bottles, and we know now that we don't want lead in our paint, and things like that. And you can screen your ingredients against these known bad hazards and really make some progress and know if you have somewhere to focus. But screening can only get us so far, because you change a molecule, you change the name of the chemical, and now it's on nobody's list, but it's got the same or worse hazards associated with it. That's what happened with a lot of this BPA replacement. Okay, it's BPA free, but what is it? We don't know. So to really get at this issue, we need full assessments. And these full assessments get at the hazards and the exposure involved, and I'm going to get into that in a little more detail. So full assessments are kind of a new concept out there. And then optimize, right? We're all on the path to optimization here. And so what we really want are products that are better and healthier and that we know are proven to be safe. And so that's the ultimate goal here. So in the Cradle to Cradle program, what we do, and what I've got here is, it's going to be difficult for you to see, but in the middle is your typical laundry detergent bottle. And we look at all of the homogeneous materials that are present in that bottle to 100 parts per million. So what those homogeneous materials would be the plastic bottle and the plastic cap, because they're 2 different kinds of plastic, the paper that makes up the label, the inks on the label, the glue that holds the label on, the liquid itself that's inside. Those are all homogeneous materials that are present at 100 parts per million. They can't be broken down any further. And then within those homogeneous materials, we look at every chemical within that 200 parts per million. And so the Cradle to Cradle inventory goes very, very deep. Then we do a screening in our program against our banned list. And a banned list isn't, it's a starting place. It's not an ending place. But we do have a banned list historically. These are some of the things that are on there. So the very first thing you can know about a product that's certified at any level is that it will not have any of these things in it. You can't be certified if you have these things. PVC, certain metals like mercury and lead and chromium-6, certain flame retardants, certain phthalates, chlorinated hydrocarbons. These are some of the things that are of great concern. This is very similar to the Living Building Challenge Red List. This is very similar, has a lot of overlap with the Perkins and Will precautionary list, things like that. So these are things that we're all kind of targeting out there. And of this, I have to be up front because I'm with Tarkett here. PVC is the most controversial. And we're going to talk about that in depth on Friday. And that's where Diane and I have had some really fun conversations. And Bill Walsh at Healthy Building is going to be on that panel as well. So we're going to talk about it. Let's just talk about it. But then after we do the screening, because again, we don't want to stop at screening, we go into the assessment phase. And these assessments are conducted by chemists and toxicologists. They report on the impacts against 24 human and environmental endpoints, and they consider both hazard and exposure. I'm going to go into this a little bit more. And in doing this, it helps us identify the safe things. Tarkett's looked at 1,000 and some chemicals. Now they've got things that they know pass this very rigorous test, and they can use that as their green list, as their place to start when they're designing new things, rather than starting over every time. So the first step in this full assessment process is to first I'm going to say is to look at known bad hazards. I've got this in a little bit different order here. But a place that the chemist and toxicologist will start is to look at a known bad hazards list. It might not be on our ban list, but it might be another known bad hazard. It might be a carcinogen, mutagen, reproductive toxicant, and that's a great place to start. But then they're going to also look at toxicological data, scientific literature. They're going to look at models and analogs of different chemicals that have been examined. And what they're aiming to do there is to assign a green, yellow, red, gray, or black rating to each, and this is, we're at the chemical level here, to each endpoint. So we're talking about, is it a carcinogenic, is it a mutagen, does it have skin sensitivity? There's 24 of these things, and they're human and environmental endpoints. And so they're saying, oh, this is a real inhalative, we're going to give this a red for inhalative carcinogen here. Carbon black, right? It's in the remote control here. It's the colorant here. It's in your computers if you've got a Dell computer and that kind of thing. Carbon black would come up red because if you can inhale that, it's very dangerous to you. But as it's present here in my computer and my remote control, it's locked up in there, and that's where the assessor looks at the exposure consideration. Oh, you can't inhale this, so it's okay for use. But now we also have to ask, is it cyclable? So that's another thing that comes into the cradle-to-cradle assessment. So the chemist toxicologist is assigning ratings against these 24 human and environmental endpoints for every chemical that's present at 100 parts per million or higher. And they're looking at each of those for exposure as well. And so if it's a case like this carbon black that we just talked about, carbon black, it would be red. They can move that chemical to a yellow because it's safe in the form that it's at here. There are several examples like that too. Lead, is another example. There are safe uses of lead. This is something I usually have animated here, but it's sitting flat, so let me try to describe it with my hand motions here. What I wanted to do was summarize what happens. So for every chemical that is present in that detergent bottle that we were talking about, there's a hazard assessment against 24 endpoints, so you can imagine the spreadsheet that's there. And then for each of those endpoints, they do the exposure assessment. Is there exposure? And does that change the rating? And then they give a final chemical risk assessment rating. And it's very conservative. If anything in that line is red, the whole chemical gets a red. So they don't put a value on, oh, it's going to irritate your skin. If it's going to irritate your skin, it gets the same as if it's going to cause cancer. So very conservative on the chemical assessment side of this. And then they roll all those chemicals up into a material so that we can get a material rating for the cap. So that's all the work that just went into doing the cap, and we do it for the paper and the inks and the bottle that's the plastic that's in the bottle. So all those get rolled up. So that's what's behind when you see Cradle to Cradle Silver in material health. That's what went into it, and hopefully that will become more meaningful to you. And so. Then in the optimization, sorry, I couldn't read it either. You guys for sure can't read it. What I want to say, the final step is this optimization. They reformulate, they innovate, they find other alternatives if something has been given a red or X-assessed rating in there. But here's where I want to end with our discussion about material health. Let's make this easy for you. If you see a cradle-to-cradle material health rating that is bronze, you know that it doesn't have any of those ban list items in it. Not only does it not have the ban list items in it, but it's gone through this very rigorous process. So you know that the manufacturer has a lot of knowledge about this product, and they can start and they've put processes in place to start to improve on this. If it's silver, you know, and this is such a tough marketing thing. I really struggle with this. We got to get some pros on this. If it's silver, no exposure to carcinogens, mutagens, or reproductive toxicants. I want to say that about this house we're building at Greenbuild next week, because all of the products have met silver or better in material health. And so I want to like put it in the press release, no carcinogens, mutagens, or reproductive toxicants. But it's like, are you kind of going to go like, ew, you know? What's in my stuff? So anyway, that's what you know about silver. And at gold, you know that it's safe for humans and the environment. That means that there are no red or excess chemicals in that product at all. And at the platinum level, I just don't include it in here. There are some platinum in material health, but it means that the process chemicals in the manufacturing process have also been looked at. So platinum and gold end up really being the same in the end for being safe for you. So that's what you can know about, and hopefully that gives you a sense for how do I determine material health if this is part of my job, and Cradle to Cradle can be an easy button for you in that. Okay, so now let's apply this to lead so you can walk out of here with something very practical and go and achieve these lead credits in material health. So the first, so really interesting how they did this. There's two parts to the material ingredients credit. The first is disclosure, and the second is optimization. And you see that kind of matches up with our 4 steps, right? Inventory is kind of a disclosure. You got to know what's in it before you can do anything about it. And the other part is let's do something about it and show that it's better. So that's what they're going after with the disclosure. So in point number 1, they recognize the health product declaration, which really emphasizes transparency in ingredients. So it's a self-report from a manufacturer. I'm getting ahead of myself because I know I have a slide on this next, but I'll finish my thought and then I'll get back to the slides. Self-disclosure, but gives us a fantastic guidance on how to inventory a product, because we had people saying, oh, well, here's what's in my product, well, here's what's in my product, and they were reporting it in 2 very different ways. And so this gives us a good common ground from which to report ingredient disclosure. And I'm happy to say that as part of the harmonization efforts, the HPD version 2 is now more closely does their inventory more closely aligned with Cradle to Cradle. Our hope is that with one more revisions process from both sides here, that it will be exactly the same inventory process. So once a manufacturer does their HPD inventory, they press the button and send it over to the Cradle to Cradle assessor, and they've gotten a good start on their Cradle to Cradle work. So that's our goal with harmonization with things like that. The second point here is optimization, and that's saying, and that recognizes the higher levels of Cradle to Cradle certification, silver, gold, and platinum, right? Because now that it has been inventoried and assessed, and we know that it's better than perhaps some alternatives, no carcinogens, mutagens, or reproductive toxicants, or totally safe for humans and the environment. So I've referred to the harmonization effort that we've undertaken with these other organizations, including the ILFI, the Living Futures Institute. And the goal really was, and we've been at this for 2.5 years, I think. And we started out like, we have the same goal. We all want better products on the marketplace. We're looking at this a little bit differently, each of us, and we've got different agendas here, but we all want better products. So how can we accelerate manufacturers' adoption, of these tools and help them get on the path? And that's really our common message. Manufacturers, get on the path. If you've done nothing, start with the inventory. Start with the inventory and the screening. Next, go to full assessments and let's see where you're at there. So that's what we're, as a group, really doing. The declare label, just to kind of put this in context, are any of you working on Living Future products or projects? Living Building Challenge, nobody? Okay. The declare label is a self-report list of ingredients. They're really going for public disclosure here. That's what they want to see. But they're also, the manufacturers screen against the banned list, the Living Building Challenge banned list, red list, which is very similar to our list. So we think if somebody passes, kind of self-declares this, that they're a good candidate for Cradle to Cradle. The HPD, as I mentioned, gives us a consistent reporting format for inventorying ingredients, but it also pairs with the green screen list translator, which gives us the deepest screening tool that exists out there. And it's built into the Pharos tool at Healthy Building Network. It's built into the HPD Builder version 2, which I heard is coming out any day now. Nobody wants to mention that, is it? It is, which will really help manufacturers get this difficult work done. So the HPD plus the green screen list translator is a really great step in the right direction and a deep look at this path. And then Pharos, again, is another good screening tool. They even do some of their own research on chemicals and ingredients because they're feeling like, self-report. So this kind of gives you self-report plus. Their scientists have looked at it and maybe added or provided additional comments on what's in there, but they do a deep inventory and screening of the products in Pharos as well. And then on the assessment side, there's a tool called Green Screen, and this is really a tool for manufacturers to use. This is a chemical hazard screening, and it's very similar to that hazard screening portion that I talked about in Cradle to Cradle before we do the hazard and then we do the exposure. This does the hazard portion, and actually Lauren Hine, who developed this tool way back when, was part of the Bill McDonough MBDC group, so the very good thinking, very aligned thinking. And this will help manufacturers as they design and try to optimize inside. They have just recently released a guide on how to use Green Screen for LEED version 4, and I must admit, I haven't read it yet. So there is a way to sort of apply this towards optimization. But currently, because it's a chemical assessment, they're not rolling it up into a product. And of course, you want to choose a flooring or you want to choose a chair, and you've got to roll that all up together. And so there's some guidance on how to do that. And next time I talk to you, I'll know more about that. And then, of course, there's the Cradle to Cradle, which, as you know now, does the inventory, the screening, the assessment that's hazard and exposure-based, and gives you some indication of optimization based on that level, bronze, silver, gold, or platinum. So this is usually a build, so a little more dramatic ending here to this. But what I wanted to do in here is show you how each of these tools meets where they are in that stage. So the Declare is a good inventory, plus a little bit of screening against their banned list. The HPD with the Green Screen List Translator is a good inventory and screening tool. There's the full green screen assessment, which can give you an indication that maybe there's no benchmark ones, which is their sort of X-assessed, similar to ours. That would give you an indication of if that were an optimized product. And then, of course, we've got the cradle-to-cradle material health indication or the full certification. And when you look at the full certification for LEED, you can just look at the material health score. They will accept that. So if they're gold in material health but bronze overall, they'll accept that at gold, and you get the extra credit that goes along with that. So option 1, the disclosure, you can choose any tool that's within that box. The HPD and Green Screen List Translator, Cradle to Cradle at any of those at any of the levels, bronze, silver, gold, or platinum, and some green screen indicators as well. So because there's 3,000 Cradle to Cradle products that already meet this requirement, and there are hundreds, I know at least, HPDs. This option 1 is a very doable credit. You can go out and get this credit because they're asking you to pick 20 products that are permanently installed, and you can get this material health credit. So if I won't start to list the 20, but you can figure it out. It's a very gettable credit. The second one is harder because not only are they saying, pick the products that have been optimized, the silver, gold, and platinum equivalents, but do it 25% by cost. And so for us to help you get this credit, I need to get some more high dollar items certified. I need to have the drywall certified, and I need to have it certified at a high level for it to really contribute to this. The concrete, and therefore the additives that are in the concrete, are going to need to be certified so that we can really add this all up. So right now, option 1 is very doable. I'm still working on saying option 2 is doable, but that was the intent also of LEED, to make it a little out of reach so that we worked towards these things. So is that clear? Do you get how to get the credit? Okay, cool. Then with that, I'll just say you can find the Cradle to Cradle products on our website. It's a free registry. There's a material health registry and the full certification registry. And this is what the scorecard would look like. So you can either screenshot this for documentation, or you can print out the certificate, which is now downloadable from our website. So that's how you document your 20 items for the credit. Finally, the downloading the certificate was the brand new thing we just added. So with that, I'd just like to leave us on a note that will give me a good transition into Susan's conversation that she's going to lead with you. Cradle to Cradle is about more than material health, but you see we have a very rigorous and detailed material health. It's really about safe ingredients perpetually cycled, and the material health came about because we couldn't perpetually cycle these things unless we knew what was in them and we knew that they were safe. So material reutilization, I think, is the next big conversation that we're going to be having in the built environment. Boy, these got really interesting, didn't they? And what I wanted to say here is, we've been unintended consequences when we put policy out there, and the policy to choose products that have high recycled content has got us into a little bit of a bind, because it was sort of like, let's increase recycled content, let's reduce, reuse, recycle. Fantastic. But now we have all these questionable feedstocks, and we're wondering, can we really recycle some of this stuff? Is it safe to recycle that? And in reality, it's one of these sort of less bad strategies. It's a waste minimization strategy. There might be toxic contamination. Recycling can be energy intensive. And again, we end up with questionable feedstocks. So the goal, instead of recycling, we need to set our aim at upcycling. And upcycling gets us to the safe ingredients that are perpetually cyclable, that are designed to be taken apart so that each can enter its nutrient cycle. I didn't talk a lot about that, but to design for reutilization, you either are designing for the biological nutrient cycle, which I think we can all get our arms around in sort of the composting sort of a thing, but there's plenty of fabrics and other things that can be perpetually cycled in the biological, or the technical nutrient cycle. And these are the metals and the plastics and those kinds of things that we're looking at. And so you have to, from the beginning, design for one of those nutrient cycles and be clear about that. But maybe you have something that's together. I'm sure this chair could be a combination of both biological and technical nutrients. If we can easily take them apart and get them into their respective nutrient streams, then that is a great strategy, a good design. And there are many other design strategies that you can apply to that rather than just design for disassembly. But I mean, even designing for durability is another good one. And what we're really going for there is nutrients that retain their value, so somebody wants them. Ideally, the manufacturer wants them back. And there's several stories in the Tarkett portfolio here. They want it back because it's their valuable raw materials. And it in some cases can be cheaper for them than extracting new raw materials. And so that's the ideal. So what we want to do is to design to eliminate the concept of waste with intentional nutrient cycles that retain their full value. And that's really the next conversation that we're going to have. And if you haven't seen this report yet, I'd say, add this to your holiday reading list. What kind of a nerd am I? This is the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, and they put out this report a couple of years ago now, and it's actually a series of reports on the circular economy. And what they've done so well that Cradle to Cradle never did, we put out this design for, Bill and Michael put out this design philosophy, but then they didn't really have the business case to back it up. Ellen MacArthur Foundation really gives us the business case for why this makes sense for companies and the kind of money that can be saved and the kind of value that can be extracted from material reutilization. And so really intriguing, and we're going to be expanding this conversation as we go forth into 2016, and I hope you'll join us in that. So with that, I'd like to say that concludes the AIA portion of this presentation, and I'm happy to take your questions.
Questions?
So what's the social awareness portion of the Cradle to Cradle?
The social fairness portion. That goes, so they go through the stage of sort of inventory assessment and optimization with that as well. So what they're first going to do at the basic and the bronze level is look at, and this is about their manufacturing facilities, so whatever manufacturing facilities we're looking at for this certified product. They're going to do the social hotspots database and look to see if there's any issues that are going on there. If they're manufacturing in the US, that's usually not at all a concern, but they need to become aware of what the issues are in the various locations that they're working on. Is labor, age, safety, what are the concerns there? And then they go through a progressive series of audits around social fairness that looks at all of these issues, wages, safety, and as you get to the higher levels, it looks at engaging in innovative projects with your employees, with the communities in which you engage in, and really becoming a partner in that. And so there's a lot of flexibility in how a manufacturer can pursue the social fairness once they've gone through those audits and shown where they are on that. But then to get some of these sort of, if you will, innovation points to get to like gold and platinum, they do some of these creative products with projects with their employees and their communities. And for the first time ever, just today, I've learned that somebody's project has been rejected. So there is it's not just creativity that we really have to, and it was because they were making money on the project. And so, yeah, it's a great project, but ultimately money came back to them. So does that help to a little bit? Good, yes.
So this may be sort of outside the scope of Cradle to Cradle and what you guys work on, but it seems like you're part of a lot of like groupings of people who have similar goals. So how are you, the concept of Cradle to Cradle is to get the materials back into the stream, to upcycle them or to recycle them in whatever way. How are you working on that end of things?
The systems.
Yeah.
Oh, I know. Yes, and this is where I think our partnership with the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. The Ellen MacArthur Foundation's been working a lot in Europe, and they're just coming to the U.S. right now, and they'll be having a Circular Economy 100 here in the U.S. Tarkett is a member. That's really going to help us with these systems and processes. So I think of it as embedded constituent groups here. The manufacturers are really at the center of it because they've got to design things right to start with. And then we've got the buildings that these things go into. So imagine thinking about buildings as material banks. What if these buildings were all made up of these valuable materials? You know, and there's actually projects in the Netherlands going on like this where they got different financing because they could prove that the materials in the buildings had value at the end and could be reused. And so imagine those a collection of buildings, and then imagine the regions that those are in. And that's where those systems and the take-back systems really need to come into play. And we need to move from waste management resource to nutrient management systems. So that's going to happen at that level. And then I would say the government and the policy level, and even someone like the USGBC or the AIA could put policies in place that provide the right incentives or disincentives to get this behavior change. It's really going to take a lot of behavior change to get to circularity. But so you're right, at the Institute, we're not exactly working on policy, but we want to partner with people who are working on those policies, because those are the things that are going to make it real for manufacturers to be designing like this.
See small business owners who are really innovators in a lot of fields at a startup kind of level integrating with Cradle, because it is an expensive process.
You know, it has been an expensive process in the past, and the cost is coming down. And so, two things: we just launched the very first online training program, which is $199. So a startup company, they can get in there, they can understand the philosophy, and they can start to apply these things within their company, and they can engage in a network. Tarkett participates in the Catalyst program, and they'll be mentoring other people in that system to help bring them along. Now, when we actually get to the certification process, the expense really comes in doing those material health assessments. And what we're partnering with Healthy Building Network and a few others. That announcement will come out early next year to build a shared hazards database so that we can really lower the cost, increase the quality, and speed up the rate of those assessments. That's kind of the roadblock in our material health pipeline right now, and that will help, that will enable smaller folks to engage in the process more. When somebody actually finishes their report that they work on with their assessor and submits it to the Institute, the certification only costs $2,600 in year one and $650 every year after that. So that the actual certification to get the label once you've done the hard work with your assessor really isn't that much. But right now, the barrier is what we just discussed. So a few things that we're doing to enable it, and in time we'll crack this open. Democratize Cradle to Cradle. Oh.